about dealing with the death penalty. So, for instance, aside from the death penalty, there will be situations where the rabbis say, do not compromise on any observance of Jewish law. Like, it's better to give up your life than to compromise on anything. Then there will be other circumstances where the rabbis say, okay, you can compromise on this and this and this, and you can't compromise on this. So the rabbis will have to apply God's law to constantly changing circumstances. So God's law is immutable and universal, but it still has to be applied in constantly changing circumstances, whether it's the death penalty legislation or other legislations.
Okay, I'm going to say a little different. The death penalty legislation that the Talmud says is you need 2 witnesses and you need prior warning and you need 23 judges, that's specifically talking about when we have access to putting together a Sanhedrin of 23 judges. Mm-hmm. However, when we don't have that situation, which is ever since we went into exile.
Last 2,000 years.
Right. Ever since then, so that's not what the Talmud's not speaking to us now when it says that. That's what I think you're trying to say.
Well, that's another way, that's part of what I'm trying to say. Often I'll be in a Talmud class and people will say, we'll be studying a piece of Talmud, and then people go, oh, so this is how I should, react to this situation, or
this is,
and it's like, no, we don't paskin necessarily what every, section of the Talmud says. That's not the definitive word for how we paskin today. How we paskin today is frequently completely different than the 2,000-year-old or 3,000-year-old rabbinic discussion that we're studying in the Talmud.
Right.
So people always run into that trouble in Talmud
we don't
class.
paskin out of the Talmud. That was done for us, like you mentioned, the Rambam and other
Joseph Caro and
other people. They already did that for us.
Mm-hmm.
But I know what you're trying to say. There's 2,000 pages of Talmud.
5,000.
You can't cherry pick one page of Talmud you have to see it within the entire context, because you can find arguments and you have no idea that 25 pages later there's something that says at first glance the complete opposite. So if you just focus on one little page of Talmud, you're going to miss the big picture. That's why somebody should never paskin halacha until they've learned the entire Talmud.
And not just the entire Talmud, but then the rabbinic commentaries.
Oh, absolutely. But I'm saying, if you haven't learned the entire Talmud, don't even talk to me, because what you haven't learned could totally contradict everything you've said up till now. That's why you have to learn the entire thing.
And also you need to be someone with common sense. There's a traditional Jewish saying that the common sense is like the 5th volume of the Shulchan Aruch. You need to have a rabbi who can apply his learning to the circumstances of the day. So someone who just studies Talmud is not necessarily a great decider of Jewish law. The qualities that make for a posek aren't only study of Talmud. So we have rabbis who arise in the Jewish community who we look to decide the most difficult questions of Jewish law. And they're not always necessarily the most skilled Talmudists. There are always great Talmudists, but being a great Talmudist is not enough to be a posek. There was a question in the chat room, what does the Talmud have to say about mental illness for getting someone off the death penalty?
Oh, there's so many things. I also wanted to say that somebody asked, who's Papa Bear? Do you know who that is? Mm-hmm. Is that your friend?
Mm-hmm.
I thought your friend was D-Medic.
Nope. I don't know who D-Medic is.
Oh, you don't know who D-Medic is?
Nope.
Do I know who D-Medic is? So your friend tonight is who?
I shouldn't give his identity away.
Let him
live his own individual existence.
Okay, wait a minute. So there was a question. Anyways, there was a question. How long does it take to learn the entire Talmud?
Right.
And all of its commentaries. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to say it depends. It could take a lifetime, and it's so vast and so broad and so difficult to learn. First of all, the entire Talmud is in Aramaic, so there's that. And it's very difficult, very complicated, and you can't just pick up a book and start learning it on your own. You have to learn it with somebody who's already learned it well. So it's a process, and it can take a lifetime just to get through it once, with its commentaries. Then there's some people who are huge learners.
Brilliant. Brilliant.
Rabbi,
brilliant.
listen to this.
18-year-olds.
Rav Moshe Feinstein, there's a story about him that he made a simcha because he had learned Talmud for the 101st time. He completed it for the second time, which means he at least went through it 202 times in his life. And he wasn't just learning Daf Yomi with blah, 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 blah. He was learning it with all the Meforshim. He had gone through it over 200 times. Right? So, I mean, who knows how... I don't know how long it takes.
The great rabbis have essentially the Talmud memorized. Not necessarily every single word, but you give them a pasuk and they can tell you where it's from. So there aren't that many who can do that. But
right. Okay, now what was your friend's question?
What does the Talmud have to say about mental illness as an excuse for committing murder and getting out of the death
Okay, let me
penalty?
see if I can remember. There's a thing, there's three... I don't want to say the wrong thing here. I can definitely come back with the right answer by next week. But there's three categories. I think there's a trick question. I think he already knows the answer. There's three categories of Jews, if you will, who are exempt from mitzvahs. Right? The Cheresh, Sheta, and Cotton, which is a person who, somebody's under 13 or under 12 if they're female, because they're a minor, right? Some minors aren't held. Whatever, they're not included. Cheresh is somebody who can't hear. Now, the reason why is that important? Because it used to be the Torah wasn't written down; it was only oral. So if you can't hear, you never heard any of the laws, you don't know any of the laws, right? And so you can't be held responsible for them. Today, I don't know how that works so much because everything's written down.
It's changed. It's Jewish law has changed with regard to the death.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Just in the last 300 years.
Sheta. Sheta is the other one, is a crazy person. He's nuts. He's completely, he has no ability to distinguish between, right and wrong. So how could he possibly be held responsible that he can't comprehend these things, right? So I know that that's enough to putter the guy from mitzvahs aseh. In other words, a positive commandment, like, he doesn't wear tefillin, we don't hold him responsible for it because they don't understand tefillin. Can't say with certainty that gets him out of negative ones like murder. So before I put my foot in my mouth, I definitely want to double check.
There's a question in the chat room. How long does it take for a rabbi essentially to memorize the Talmud?
Did I just answer that? Go ahead.
And these are only the geniuses, but some of them, by their 20s, will essentially have the entire Gemara on instantly.
Oh, I met Rabbi Hirschsprung. You ever heard of him?
Not sure.
He was a big Rav up in Canada, up in Montreal. He had photographic memory. I mean, really photographic memory. They gave him the pin test.
Yeah.
You know what the pin test is?
Stick a pin through
You stick a
one
pin.
page.
You stick a pin in the Talmud on a certain letter, all the way to the bottom, and he'll tell you on the way down, right?
Yeah.
You pull the pin out, and he'll tell you on both sides of each page, all the way down, what letter it went through. I mean, that's freaking bizarre, right?
Yeah.
And I met him when I was in Montreal, and he quizzed me really fast. I was in the base midrash. I was learning Gemara Tinus, and he was like, he came by, and I was like, please don't come by. I was like, so, and he came by and he stopped and he looked down on the page, right? And he said, and he gave me a quick question, about this Gemara I was learning. I was like, you know what, I'm not going to mess with this guy. I know he knows it, but without looking at it, he knows the whole thing better than I do looking at it. I was like, whatever. No. Okay.
Martin Luther King Day.
So, but I wanted to finish up on murders.
Okay.
Okay. So Esther asked the question about death penalty. Is there death penalty in Judaism? Is she still in the chat room? Do the scroll bar thing.
No.
Esther left?
No. Yes, she's still there.
We got a full room.
She's still there.
How many people are in there?
About 15, 20, 15. I'd say.
Who's? Oh, Ellen is that guy. Okay, I'll get to milk and meat. I think we've done it, haven't we? 15 people in the chat room. Doesn't happen. Hey, give me 5, man.